The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
It's spring, the weather is getting warmer, so we are giving away free David Pakman Show t-shirts with any one-year membership. Go to davidpakman.com/spring to sign up. You'll get the commercial-free podcast, bonus show video, bonus show audio, and the archive of shows, Lewis, that dates all the way back to that incredible day, August 17th, 2005, the first episode ever of the show.
And the world was forever changed.
Thank you, Lewis. We've been talking over the last week about the Supreme Court hearing the healthcare reform lawsuits. As we know, the constitutionality of a healthcare mandate. You okay, Lewis? Lewis is really having a coughing fit over there.
Yeah, I just had some stuff in my throat. I'm good.
Is it that coconut water with lavender?
It was a grass jelly drink today.
Is that for real? You're drinking grass jelly?
Well, that's what it's called. I don't think it's actually grass jelly.
You might want to look into that. It could explain why you're coughing like that.
We'll see.
And Justice Antonin Scalia says the court really can't be bothered to read Obamacare. He said, you really want us to go through these 2,700 pages? And Natan seems to think it's actually a pretty reasonable thing to say. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, what I say is that the lawmakers didn't even read it when they passed it. It's well known that, when most bills are passed that are longer than 2 pages, most of the congressmen who vote for it, either way, don't read it. So why should he have to read it? I mean, I would say that even though I disagree with Scalia on this case, they should just reject flat out any bill that was passed without the lawmakers reading it.
Yeah, but how do you enforce that?
Lie detector test.
So you do lie detectors on everybody who was involved in the bill first to see if they've read it. And
no,
then,
I'm joking, obviously.
The real problem I have with this entire review of the healthcare bill, Lewis, through the Supreme Court, is that, in theory, the legal system has some, in other words, these justices are in theory impartial, and they are going to simply analyze the law and precedent to determine whether this healthcare reform bill is constitutional. But as we already know how many of them are going to vote. I mean, it seems really like it's Stevens. Which votes are in play? Stevens and Scalia, maybe.
No, Stevens retired. It's Roberts and Anthony Kennedy are supposedly the two votes that are in play.
Kennedy and Roberts are the ones that are in play. Why do I always get Stevens and Kennedy confused?
You tell me.
Old white guys?
I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So there are really 2 votes that are in play. So, and really what we see here is that the justices who were appointed by Republicans basically are going to say that this is unconstitutional, and those who were appointed by Democrats are going to say basically this is constitutional. We have these 2 votes swing right now, which really just kind of confirms what we all know, which is that the Supreme Court is a political institution, and it suggests that, well, there is one kind of impartial legal position on topics if you are conservative, and there is a completely different one if you are liberal. It kind of says, well, the legal system is not just about impartiality. Am I wrong?
Well,
what other explanation could there be why there is such a correlation between who appoints you and how you vote when we're talking about the law, which the law in theory is not a subjective thing?
Yeah, we've talked for years about how they vote in the interest of the parties that appointed them. But,
yeah.
I mean, I think it's kind of pointless to talk about that. I mean, we can talk about how we might change it, the system with which they're appointed, I guess. I don't know.
So, but I guess what I'm saying, Natan, there is no objective truth about whether the healthcare reform bill is or isn't constitutional. It simply depends on the political orientation of those who are on the court.
Yeah, I mean, it's the question of interpreting the Constitution. The Constitution, kind of like the Bible, these people don't interpret it literally. Some of them do, others don't. Some of them have a worldview that makes their interpretation of the Constitution different and allow, this bill.
And some of them aren't even making an effort to interpret the Constitution. It does not matter to them whether or not it's constitutional. They're still going to vote based on politics, I guess.
Yeah, maybe it's not so much about different interpretations of the Constitution. It's just kind of an indifference for what the Constitution says.
Let's face it, I'm willing to bet that everyone on the Supreme Court, before they even had this on their laps, knew which way they were going to vote.
Well, most of them, yeah. I mean, Clarence Thomas hasn't even asked a question for, 6 years? He says you don't even need the hearings. He already knows how he's going to vote.
That's right. But I did want to make one more point about the views that these justices have on the Constitution. Scalia and Thomas, for example, are two of the guys who are originalists, which means that they look at the Constitution in the context of what the founders had in mind,
Right.
Which is obviously absurd even on the face of it, based on the fact that society has changed drastically since it was written.
No question.
Whereas some of the other justices, the so-called liberal ones, have other views that take into account everything that's happened since then.
What's your constitutional context that you use, Louis? What's your...
You're asking me if I'm an originalist?
Yeah.
I
really hope not.
I can't answer that. In some ways, I feel like certain parts of the Constitution would still hold up now, regardless of what's happened since then, and I think others are completely useless. I just can't answer that.